Well, howdy, folks. General back to you. Going to talk to you a little bit about CB radio. Somebody said, "What's a CB radio?" That's what we used way back when. That's one of those old school things. A bunch of years before cell phones came out. That's when the kids was playing marbles instead of doing one of these numbers on their cell phone. Anyway, we'll start off in the very beginning of my roots in it, and I got pretty deep in the thing. When I was going to junior high school, the shop teacher there also worked on CB radios, and I think he was a ham too. Not for sure of that, but he knew how to put up antennas and stuff. That's one of the first jobs I had, was installing antennas on passenger cars, trucks. I never did the 18-wheeler, but I did trucks, getting up in the ceilings of them, and running wire and all that stuff, drilling holes and doing mobiles. Helped put up a few base antennas. One fella had a huge, it was called a moonraker. That was a huge antenna. It was like a bunch of boxes, square boxes, made out of square tubing, or round tubing, I think, aluminum tubing. But they were kind of an X shape, and they were mounted on a beam sideways, so they were quite large, and they would point wherever you wanted them. Had a ham M rotor mounted on a 3 pieces of pipe with triangle. You've seen the big antennas, they got zigzag looking superstructures in them and 3 pipes up there. Well, this thing was, I think he built it there in his backyard himself, and it was like 150 feet high. And then he had this ham M rotor mounted on the top of it. All the wiring and stuff, RG8U coax, that big coax, size of your little finger. PL259 connectors on each end. And had it all laid out there, had a concrete base. It was down in there too. I mean, it was probably 6 foot deep. He had all that ready and had the thing hooked up to it where it'd hinge up. Two sides would hinge up, and then he'd pin the third one when it got up there. He had a buddy of his come out there with a helicopter. They dropped a line down. They hooked the thing to it. It was one of those things that you could take loose by pulling another cord, and it'd come loose. I'm not real sure what kind of doolally it was, but it worked. And they hooked that thing to that helicopter, and the helicopter picked it up, just kind of walked it over, and he put the pin in it. We had guy wires, each one of us, whole bunch of CBers out there already had all of these, I guess it was rebar with a loop on it on top. He'd made a bunch of them, had them drove in the ground. It was in concrete too, and it guided the thing off, just wire after wire after wire. excuse me. And he showed me where the guy wire had come down so far, and then it would go into an insulator, and then another wire come off of it. It was still guy wires, but it was isolated from the antenna. And the different lengths of wire were actually antennas, and they run wires up there, to it for the different frequencies. The different frequencies got to have different wavelengths and all that stuff. I did know the formula for that. I do know, if you know how the formula goes, CB radio was on a 27 megacycle band, and 27.085 megacycles was channel 11. Channel 11. Halfway in there. Channel 11 was 27.085 megacycles. Yeah, that's right. But anyway, that comes out to 18 feet 6.5 inches is one wavelength for 27.085 megacycles. And I did know the formula, but I don't know it anymore. You can look it up, I guess. So that's how long a full wave antenna would be. And they had a thing they called a big stick antenna, which was just a fiberglass pole. Had stainless steel, I think it was, fittings on it. And it was just a single wire up through there. Inside this, I'd say it's probably inch and a half, inch and 3/4 inch round base. It was just a pole, a white pole with threads in the end of it for a 102-inch fiberglass whip antenna, just like you'd put on your car, but it's screwed in the top of it. And it was made to go on a big stick, on a tree, take it up in a tree and tie it off, And the thing is now, a buddy of mine had a tower that he had bought, had his antenna on it. He said, I've had that thing up 2 or 3 times. He said, I'm right here at the base of the mountain. And he said, I can't get out for anything. I said, have you tried it anywhere else? He said, what do you mean? I said, you realize the air is just like the ground. It's got layers in it. He said, tell me more. I said, give you an idea, when you start putting up an antenna, don't try to make it the highest thing in the world. It might be right under your table. He said, oh, you're just pulling my leg. I said, no. I said, let me play with it. I said, I'll holler at you and you try it. And then quit talking, because I don't want to get shocked. So I played around with it a little bit. I got a couple of concrete blocks and a couple of pieces of wood and propped it up, and it was just barely clearing the ground. I said, try that. And he broke on this guy in Canada and talked to him a minute. He said, how high have you got it? I said, just barely clearing the ground. He said, you're kidding. I said, come out here and look at it. He said, how you figure that? I said, that's where that particular layer is in the air that your antenna needs to be. He said, I thought it being right here at the base of the mountain. I said, that doesn't make any difference in the world. People think that they have to be up above everything. That's not so. It might be here, and then down there it might be 50 foot up. Or it might be down the hill a little ways. So I learned that working with them boys, putting antennas in and stuff, picking up a little here, a little there, from, I never did go to school for it, but old boy, I worked with him a little bit. He taught me how to frame houses and do roofs and remodeling and all that stuff, back when I was a kid. And he taught me about CB radios. He was the representative for what was the name of that? KRIS radios. He had a Chris T23. Back when it was just 23 channels, 440 channels come out. It was 23 channel, 5 watt. That's all a mobile could be. And people have their little foot warmers, with little linear amplifier that your output, you run a PL259 was a connector, went on a piece of RG58U coax, which was about the size of a little smaller than a pencil. You had one of those PL259s on each end. Some of them would solder on, some of them would crimp on. Didn't really make any difference as long as it was a good connection. Keep your SWR down. And then they'd run that over to their kicker, which was illegal, but they wanted to have a little bit of extra racket they was making, and they could talk skip with it. Talking skip was the conditions had to be just right. Usually kind of cloudy, where it would skip your signal farther. And fella was going to be my daddy-in-law. I was on his set. He had a 3-element beam, and I was talking to Nova Scotia, Canada, on the back end of his beams. It wasn't even pointed that way. It pointed to Florida. It's funny. But Citizen Band radio, there was a lot of BS on it, but there was absolutely no cussing allowed on it. And that was before 40 channels and the Hollywood got hold of it, messed it up. But Channel 9 was the emergency channel. It was illegal to talk on Channel 9 unless it was emergency traffic. So hardly anybody monitored it. So if you did have an emergency and got on Channel 9, you just talking. Nobody'd hear you. So there's this alert, that's Affiliated League of Emergency Radio Teams, started monitoring it, and it was all volunteer. You had to pay a little amount to be on the roll. Got your badge, which was a kind of a diamond-shaped thing, red and black. And you can look it up, ALERT. And I think it was like $15 or something a year just to stay on the roll. And one of my biggest fires that I went to was in Chattanooga, one of the big oil fires. I mean, one of the big oil tanks, million-gallon tank, got on fire. Not real sure how. And me and another fellow from the alert went out there, and pulled right up to the fire engine and said, "We volunteer, wherever you need us." So they put us in the retention tank out there, which was, it was hot as blazes right where we was at. But they put us in this retention pond holding the soft suction line, which is, I guess it was a 5 or 6 inch corrugated hose. Well, it was a straight, but it had that spring wire inside that kept it open, where it wouldn't suck down. And then it had a screen guard on the end of it to keep the leaves and stuff out of it. And you had to hold it low enough under the water to keep a vortex from starting. If the vortex did start, you had to kill it with your hand, but keep it out of the mud. And one of us would be holding it down there, and the other guy out there with him would be splashing water up on him all the time, and steam just rolling off of us. He'd duck, one of them would duck down and be splashing water up on the one holding the hose, and that thing's sitting there chug. So it's beating you to death anyway. When you just couldn't stand it anymore, you handed it off to the other guy, and he'd stand up with it, and then you flashing water on him. We did that for 18 hours straight. Yeah, 18 hours. And both of us teenagers, they were 16 years old. And they felt sorry for us. They got some silver suits, and they brought one of us out, and one of them stayed in there, helping while they suited me up. And then I went back in and got it. The other guy went up there and got a silver suit, and it helped a lot. We were still having to splash water because steam was just rolling off of us, because we weren't that far from the fire. But we was in this retention pond. We sucked that thing down to a mud hole. And later years, I ended up, I'd rubbed elbows with the firemen and the police and stuff. I wanted to be a policeman. And this new chief come up there and run me off. Everybody else raised Cain, because he wants to be one of us. He's a kid. Get him out of here. I said, well, what the heck? So I joined the fire department. I still volunteer, but I stayed in it 21 years. I put out a lot of fire. But I used my CB radio, to get me in there on the calls until I got me a scanner where I could, when I talked to the chief, me and Chief was tight. I got him to tell me the frequency of his toner, his little beeper he carried. So I had a chip made for my scanner, that same frequency. So when it toned him out, it toned me out. So I showed up for all the fires, unless I was at work. If I was at work, I stayed at work and did that. It might be 2:00 in the morning, that thing would go off. And Mama knew, said, when that thing goes off, just don't say nothing. I'm out of here. It might be an hour, it might be 10 hours. Never know. But CB radio was way we talked, you know. If I need to get hold of my wife, you know, I did go out there and get on CB. And on my post picture for this video, it was one of my first radios. It's a TRC 80, I think, walkie-talkie, and it's a pretty good size walkie-talkie. It's military size, but it's citizen band, 5 watt. I want everything with that, everywhere with that darn thing. And I got it by mowing yards. Yeah. Had me a mayonnaise jar cleaned out and dried. Every time I'd go out, I'd buy a little bit of gasoline and my oil and put the rest of it in the jar. Because I wanted me a radio. So I bought me a TRC 80, I think it was. CB radio walkie-talkie. Darn battery pack, I think it held 10 AA batteries. That was the battery pack now. You know how heavy that was. But anyway, later years, my dad used that radio in the boat when he'd go out deep sea fishing. He'd use it for ship ashore because the place we were staying had a CB radio. So if he needed to tell him something, like if a hurricane's coming, you know, he's going the opposite way. But CB radio was a very good something other to have. Well, Channel 9, like I say, was an emergency channel. Alert monitored it, but it kind of petered out after a while, and there wasn't that many members of it locally here. But somebody come up with REACT. That's Radio Emergency Action Citizens Teams. And they were going to monitor Channel 9. Well, Channel 10 was the trucker channel. And some of those truckers had a lot of power. I'm telling you, they'd come through with a KW or something, 1,000 watts. And if we were on an emergency call and they were on Channel 9, which is the next channel up, it'd just cover us up altogether. So the FCC, that's the Federal Communications Commission, got with Hollywood, and they made several movies calling Channel 19 the Truckers Channel. Instead of Channel 10, Channel 19. Well, that was half the 27 megacycle band away from Channel 9. So that took all those big rigs. They followed followed suit like the FCC was hoping they would, and they moved their channel to Channel 19 or 19. And very few people bled on Channel 9. If you had bleed over, in other words, you were putting out more power than you're supposed to, or your frequency needed to be adjusted where you were like sideband, which was a whole nother something another, sideband. You had 40 channels, and then you split the difference on the sides where you knew where you was going, and your friend knew where you was going. you could hear half of the conversation just barely, unless you tuned in on the sideband to get that particular frequency where you could understand what the thing was going on. It was kind of a coded thing. But Citizen Band, you didn't have to learn Morse code. Now, to be a ham, you had to, and of course, they could go anywhere, any frequency they could talk on, I think, except military channels and airplanes and police and fire. But anything else they could talk on, they could listen to all of it. But you had to have your call letters. You had to give your call letters when you first started your talk, and then go ahead and say what you're going to say. And then when you get ready to clear out, you said your call letters again, and I'm clear. And a lot of them didn't have call letters. So they just went by what we called a handle, which would be a nickname. And I was the old Bob White. I asked my dad, I said, what would be a good handle for me? He said, well, you hunt birds. I said, you hunt Bob White quail? I said, what about Bob White? I said, that'll work. And later years, they shortened where they, instead of Bob White, it ended up being BW. When everybody started shortening their handles down. So I was Bob White or BW. But I was in rescue and fire and rescue for 21 years, using CB radio, most of it. And but now I knew some hams. They were super smart. They know all that code and all that stuff. And I tried to learn about it. All that I was sitting there, But CB radio was more of a gossip line. But we had, we had 21 Club. That was where we had coffee breaks, we'd go to a local park, like around a lake or something, county park that had a pavilion or something, and we'd go there and set up. And of course, we had to okay it and what do you call it? Reserve it. I think a certain amount of money had to be put on it, and so everybody had to chip in a little bit, to go to it. And they had coffee and drinks and whatnot. No alcoholic beverages at all, and no cussing. You brought your kids, and we called them little coffee breaks, That was ours was the 21 Club. That's where I met the girl I was supposed to marry, but like a goofball, I didn't marry her. And you can't go back in time and fix that. But like my wife said, that was water over the bridge. Anyway, that's about all I can put in there to you. I think. There's a pile of information. And the reason I'm doing this video is because of a commenter on one that I did about React. I told him, I said, I'd do a CB radio, an emergency video, which is this one. And you don't hardly hear anybody talk about CB radio anymore because you got cell phones. But that was the principal way. If you needed gasoline, all you had to do is get on Channel 9 and say, hey, I'm out of gas. Guy comes on there and says, where you at? Or what's your 20? And we went on a 10 code. 1020 was location. So they say, what's your 20? And you tell them what mile post you was at if you was on the interstate. Or if, now, a lot of it was back really before the interstates were really built, you know. Oh, the ridge cut wasn't even, it was still a road going across there. They hadn't cut it out. You had to go one of the back roads to get on the interstate. You know, you had to go through a neighborhood to get on the interstate. And but we used if you're trying to get a date, well, you can get a date on there. Or if you wanted to set up a square dance somewhere, you could do that. Now you weren't supposed to play music on there, but sometimes somebody would key a mic and like a desk mic, you know, and they'd slap the thing and didn't realize that the lock went over where you could push the button down and push the lock down, and you didn't have to hold the button down. And when you got done, you just tapped the button and it'd kick off the lock. Well, if you were at a place, you know, and you reached over and slapped that thing too hard, that lock would flip over, and you might play music for 30 minutes. You know, I remember, like I say, you wasn't supposed to cuss, and this fella, his wife come in just cussing like a sailor, and he reached over and slapped the mic, and he said, I've got something other that just come up. And he didn't realize that the thing had slapped, and he had more cuss words and stuff rolling out. And I think the FCC went by his house, and somebody went by his house and told him, you know, your microphone is turned on. You're laying out some cuss words. Said the sky's green from all that cussing. Anyway, I've said enough. If y'all will comment anything else that you want me to put in there, talk about, I'll do it, or I'll try. Y'all like and subscribe, hit the bell, and make comments. This General, I'm out.